Hey there viewers, welcome back to another exciting episode of Ray of All Trades. Today on the bench is a Stihl 023. Pretty cool old saw. The owner made his own scab of wood. It's actually pretty cool. Some layers of, I don't even know what kind of wood it is. Pretty cool looking. Actually kind of looks like a piece of plywood that was hollowed out in the middle. And that might be pretty tough to do. Complaint was that it doesn't start, I believe, or it runs really rough, one or the other. Let's go through it, check it out, see what it actually needs. Cool old red handle design. That kind of gives you an indication of the year, and I'd have to look it up to see what year that represents. It's got fuel. Looks and smells pretty clean. It's got bar oil. Let's see how she runs. Stall a little bit. There. Throttle wide open. Let's richen this up just a little bit. So adjusting the low screw. Let's open it up about a eighth or a quarter of a turn. See what happens. I'm gonna keep messing with that. See if I can get it to idle properly. Let me go back the other way. Maybe it's flooding out. Alright. So this step, I'll try to go back to factory settings, which is all the way closed and out one turn. So let's see where we were at. Looks like we were only a half a turn on the low. Half on the high. One full turn on the high. 1 1/4 on the high. So let's just start. Be half. 1. Go back to the low jet. Half. 1. And until we get it running right, let's go ahead and turn up our throttle a few turns. Okay, see what we get. Open up that throttle for the low just a little bit. The low jet, not the throttle. See what it changes. Tell you what, I think we need to clean out that carburetor, at least take a look and see what it looks like. That should have fired off and run good by now. More importantly, I'm tired of pulling on it. A couple 8mm here. pull the guide off. The choke lever should be able to pull that direction and just slide right out. That arm just slides right out. We're going to check this fuel on while we're in here. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to change it. That thing is rigid as can be. Yeah, we'll definitely be changing that. And then to get this throttle linkage off of here, you squeeze the dead man, pull the trigger just a little bit, then you can access this. Pop this right up out of here. Let go of your trigger, and then this rotates clockwise to come out. So when it goes back on, it's going to go just like that. I did not drain the fuel. There's not much in it, so I expect it to vent a little bit when I pop it off of here. And yeah, not crazy about it. It actually slid off. It's pretty rigid. I have a feeling that that's part of our problem. We are going to take that carburetor apart though and clean it out. And if I have a kit, we'll go ahead and put a kit in it. But I have a feeling that fuel line is a major contributing factor on this one. Slide the carburetor out. Let's get the saw out of the way. That homemade scabbard's pretty cool. Belongs to a friend of mine. I have to see how he made it. Examine the carburetor. Take out that top screw. This usually pops right out of here. There was something holding it in. It's the newer style diaphragm reed valve, but it has taken a shape which generally they don't when they're pretty decent. Internally, this has a lot of dust and dirt in here. Made its way into the carburetor. Oddly enough, the screen that right there is your internal filter is actually clear. Looks pretty clean. Let's pull off the other side. It doesn't feel terrible. I'm feeling for flexibility, listening for any kind of snapping and cracking, looking for any kind of tears or anything like that. Once you're in there though, if you have one to replace it, you do. But this one could be reassembled if it got cleaned up. Like I said, I don't see any tears on it. But again, I'm looking at more dirt inside the carburetor. Check for metering height adjustment. I do need to buy that tool. I'll try to find that tool and link it in the description for adjusting these carburetors. It's well worth it, and I want to say it's super cheap. Man, that thing is on there. I'm not the first one in this carburetor. You can kind of tell by the markings on the screw here, and also the fact that that's a aftermarket reed valve assembly. Mentioned previously, always try to reuse and keep that spring. That has been the failure of many carb rebuild kits. I did not like the way that valve came out. Let me try that again. Feels like it's sticking a little bit when it's coming out. The lever wasn't sticking. I'm still going to clean that off. I got a feeling, like I said, it was hanging up a little bit. I got to wonder if that just wasn't closing up properly, that needle. So, and then it's a metal seat down there. The end of this needle has a rubber tip on it. It does have a ring from where it was seated, but it's not an indentation. So I really would like to clean this out. Let me see if I can get it with the carb cleaner and a rebuild kit, and if not, we'll have to put it in the ultrasonic. Let's give it a try. Alright, safety glasses are in rust. Just gentle pressure, trying to clean out the passages. We're going to take out these jets and clean those passages. Low jet, high jet. Remember we already counted them. Otherwise, what you would do is turn them in to count how many turns in. So there would be half, 1, and the low jet was half, 1. Alright, they're bottomed out, so then you would take them all the way out. You would put them back in the exact same way you found them. We've already done that, trying to adjust this carburetor. Clean off the end of the high and low jet, I guess. Half and 1. So 1 full turn out, 1 full turn out. I do not have any of those gaskets, so I'm just going to clean everything off. Make sure there's no debris. To I do have a replacement jet, excuse me, needle valve. I do have a replacement needle valve. We're going to put that on spring. Hold all this in place. Drop it down into the carburetor, right where you got it. Make sure everything's still the same. I'm putting a flat edge right across the body of the carburetor and looking how far away it is from the top of that rocker arm there. Verify that it bounces up and down, doesn't get bound up by anything. Spring returns okay. Looks good. Alright, so the way these are installed is the gasket would have gone on first. The outer gasket goes on first, then the diaphragm or metering valve goes on, and the large metal piece goes on face down. That goes on like that. Cover goes on top of that. These cube carbs really aren't that hard, and they're called cubes for a reason. It looks like a little bitty cube. They're not that difficult. Just pay attention when you're taking them apart. Get them fairly snug when you're putting them together. Alright, now on this side, it has a slant to it, so it really only goes on one way. So when you're putting it on there, you can kind of see like the faint resemblance of a hole right there and one right there. Well, these reed valves allow air pressure out, and then when it's trying to come back the other direction, it seals that off, so it's reed valve. It allows air one way and not the other. That that reed valve goes on first, then that gasket, which happens to still be on the body here, but that gasket goes on next. It has alignment holes. Drop it on there just like that. I had to push the throttle out the way just to get it to seal up on there okay. Put that back on. Okay. That ought to be enough to clean up that carburetor. Let's take a quick peek and make sure there's nothing else going on that we can see. That right there is your impulse line. It lines up with that part of the saw right there. Piston goes up and down, makes vacuum and pressure out of this hole, lines up with that one, drives that metering diaphragm up and down. We are going to change out this fuel line because I really think that that's part of our problem. It just doesn't have a good connection on that carburetor. So hopefully I have one of those in stock. Get the gas drained out of this thing, and see if I get it apart. Oh yeah, I found the problem. Let's find a way to get you guys to see this. Hopefully you guys can see this. This fuel line is basically melted and collapsed. So I wanted to show it to you while it was in place because I'm probably going to end up tearing it when I'm taking it out of here. But yeah, there's no way for that fuel to have gone through that line. So you can kind of see that it's basically collapsed. It's melted. I'll try to get it out of here so you can see it better, but I doubt I'll get it out in one piece. So we can see that part of the body right there. So because you can see that, we're going to work on trying to pull it out that direction. Oof. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I don't want to say what this looks like, but yeah, it's very surprising any fuel at all passed through there. Yeah, very surprising at all, any fuel at all passed through there. So let me see if I've got one of these in stock. I think we do. Okay, you guys, didn't have one in stock. I'm gonna have to order one. Stihl 023 fuel line. It's probably, as usual, gonna come with the air filter and who knows what, maybe a spark plug or so that we probably won't use. Just a smorgasbord of items. What stops you from using a regular fuel line on this is the fact that that grommet is part of it, and it needs to be a tight fitted grommet or else fuel will leak out. So anyway, let me get some parts ordered and we'll get back to this when they come in. Stay tuned. Okay guys, following day. Parts came in, just arrived from Amazon. $25 roughly for, so $22.99 I think. Carb hub carburetor, replaces Walbro WT 286. Had good luck with these in the past. Came with a, didn't need a lot of this stuff, so we'll just put it on the shelf for future diagnosis. Came with a new ignition coil, fuel line, which is what we absolutely needed. Came with a spark plug that I very unlikely will use. Yeah, again, it's using the NGK nomenclature, but if you saw one of my previous videos, we spent an extra 20 minutes troubleshooting just because it was a brand new bad plug in the box. Came with a new intake boot, new fuel filter, new carburetor. We've already rebuilt this other carburetor, so if it doesn't run, then we'll put this aftermarket one on. Otherwise, we're going to put it on a spare parts bin, just like the coil. Came with a brand new correct air filter. I'll compare the two bases and see if the original one is any better than this one, but we can nevertheless use the air filter itself. Came with a new oil line and then a carburetor base gasket. Not a bad little score for 25 bucks, and it definitely could allow you to do a shotgun approach to a repair. If you needed it, you'd have all the pieces and parts to do so. We won't be changing that. The most important part was this fuel line. So let's get this fuel line installed. If I remember correctly, that's what the other one looked like. That's pretty bad, huh? So we're going to be installing obviously the new fuel line, and this is where the filter goes down here. You can see that it's the way it's shaped is it wants to go in that direction, which is from the top down. I'm going to use a little bit of silicone just to help lubricate it. It'll evaporate really quick. There is a square edge on here. Looks like the way we would want it is the square edge facing that way, so that the filter comes in and sweeps forward. As you're cutting, the filter is always facing downward angle. Let's get that installed. I'm just going to use a combination of pliers reaching into the tank and wiggling the fuel line and whatnot back and forth so that I don't have to pull this cover off. Pulling it off is not the end of the world, but just if I can save time by not doing that, I'd be better off. So that's about what you're looking for. You want that gasket seated properly, and the hose running forward like that up to the front. I like using hemostats when I can. Helps lock everything in place. Here's fuel filter in place. Unlock. Fuel filter falls down to the bottom just like it's supposed to. We're going to try to swap. Depends how well it's mounted. Just using a Scotch pad to clean any kind of debris off of there. Get that put back on. Looks like it can go either direction as long as the cone of this is facing into the intake. Let's push that in. Grab the brand new gasket that we were just trying to clean up for. Make sure that that impulse hole is open, passes through, because that's the only thing that's going to drive your fuel pump. Let's see, this should be going on there just like that. So let's put the fuel line on and see if we can get it that way. We may have to put it on after the fact, it's a little bit harder. Fuel line's on, and the carburetor's on. Let's add this before we get too far. It's the guide for your screwdriver for adjustments. It also allows or keeps a lot of the dust and debris out of there. Then make sure your fuel line doesn't have any kinks in it because it's bending too much. Let's grab the choke lever. fell down in there. Have the choke lever, pull it out. You see? Pull the choke back so that it matches this angle, so that that bar can just slide right in. Just like that. And that allows this lever to function. You guys remember how that went? It rotated out clockwise, so I'm going to put it back in counterclockwise. Just going to reach back in there, grab the bottom of that throttle. There's a hole at the bottom of that throttle. I promise there is, I'm not seeing it. Probably could have found it easier if I hadn't put this on. There we go. Make sure that functions like it's supposed to. Move that throttle plate forward. I'll try this with, you can do this with your fingers, but I'm going to do this so that you guys can see what I'm doing. So pull the trigger for the saw until they line up right here, and then snap them into place like that. And then you want to make sure that everything functions like it's supposed to. Okay. Next step would be my air filter assembly. And making sure that it's not pinching the fuel line. And my two 8mm nuts, or 5/16. Tighten up evenly. I'm kind of curious how this filter works in relation to that one. That was a dense foam filter. Here I had to go through a lot of that, where this is just a thin layer. I do not know if that was factory or not. Already full of oil. Let's see how she runs before we start adjusting anything and cleaning anything. Level up. noticing is fuel spraying up out of the vent line, because this vent line does not have the normal plug in it. So we're going to go see if we can find one and modify one. We just did a video on one just like it. While I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and blow a lot of this junk out of here, and I'll be right back. I cleaned a lot of that off of there. This hose right here is a vent line down to the fuel tank. There's supposed to be a plug, and the way Stihl does it is there's usually what looks like an Allen plug, an Allen headed set screw in there, and that's the plug. And usually the air comes around the threads of that plug, and that's what allows air into the tank to replace the fuel that leaves. What I did on the last Stihl we had that had the same problem, it was a Stihl 025. We added a breather from an Echo. Does the exact same thing. Stops the fuel from coming out, lets air in to replace that. So let's pull this off, add that in. I'm going to try to make it long enough so that it falls back up in here so it doesn't interfere with anything dealing with the throttle linkage. About that length there. Just a piece of Tygon fuel line. Something like that. Let's use some hemostats to try to get a good grip on there. Push it down in place. Might have to use a pair of pliers. I don't know if it's going to work or not. This is a pretty small fuel line for what we're doing. Maybe something like that. Let's put this up here into that cover. It's just a little bit long. Let's shorten this up a little bit. I'm going to take off about that much so that it sits right in there like that. When I was blowing all the debris off, the air went across the top of this vent, and it was just like a Venturi effect. Air passed across it, pulled fuel out of it, just like a carburetor would work. Kind of funny, and kind of not, because I got fuel all over everything. So anyway, like I said, air will come in here, right down that hose, and down into here. That'll stop it. And let's put the cover back on. Make sure she still runs good. And call my buddy and have him come pick this one up. Uh-oh, I just realized why that air filter doesn't work. It was made for an 023. But it definitely does not fit. So the way this cover is designed, there's no way, even if I trimmed off this, which I'm not apt to do, this filter still wouldn't cover. And it's because even if I set it up in there, it's going to hit these grooves here, or excuse me, these shoulders, before this filter is allowed to hit the top. So I would have had to cut this off as well and this off as well. So we're going to clean the original filter, put the original back on, and we know that it fits. I did try to see if I had a different filter material, so if I can't clean this one up enough, I will clean that filter out. It wasn't bad. I just was going to change it because we got a new one. Anyhow, let me pull this back off, put the old one back on, and like I said, if I can't clean this out any, or if it doesn't look like it's getting clean, I'll find another piece of foam to put in there. Stand by. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. All the dirt and dust off of it. You can even see the rib marks from the top of that cover, how tight that fits in there. Put that back on. Get the cover back on. Make sure that the tuning that we did to it is still correct. So a little bit of carburetor adjusting. Ran pretty good. I kind of like it. Collapsed fuel line, you see how the symptoms are? See, it basically is starving for fuel. It will try to run. Start adjusting the carburetor and it won't be the problem. So anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you guys got something out of this. If you did, A like, a share, a subscribe, a comment, all of those are greatly appreciated. And I'll put the carburetor kit that I bought in the description, but just know that if you've got an 023 that looks like this one, that filter that they sent you won't work. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to y'all soon.